and welcome to Dotting the I in Spaceship. I'm Bob, and this is episode 5. This week I want to talk to you about resistance, what it is, what it does, and what I think about it. But before we get to that, some quick housekeeping. Last week I wrote a blog about the hiatus that happened while I moved house. I'd hoped that I would have a lot more time to write than it turned out that I did. But now that I've finally moved and got the computer all back together and sorted out all of the kinks when it comes to getting the microphone working again, it's time to get back into making some content. On Tuesday, I released a free flash fiction story where the prompt was Signals from Space and Slugs. On Wednesday, I did a spoiler-free review of the new TV show The Boys, starring Carl Urban and Erin Moriarty. And on Thursday, I wrote my Patreon exclusive flash fiction, which was a fantasy story about a wizard battle. Next week I'll be back at my normal pace with a blog on Monday, a free story on Tuesday, a review on Wednesday, a Patreon exclusive story on Thursday, and a podcast on Friday. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. I've got a couple of ideas floating around for topics and prompts, but I haven't settled on anything definitive yet. This week my focus is on getting back into the groove. I want to make sure that I get content out on a regular basis. I would like to write a short story or a flash fiction piece and submit it to an editor for consideration. And I would like to get the first short story in the Frank Mason series written. And if not released as a self-published work, then at least in the deep end of the second draft. If I can find the time, I would also like to get a couple of articles written for writing websites to promote my website and to start building the good SEO stuff that any good website needs. But content is the number one priority. The second priority is getting a piece submitted so I can start building a portfolio of sorts. And the third piece is getting the first of the Frank Mason story, which also involves fully fleshing out an outline to work from for all of the stories for this year in the Frank Mason series, done and ready to go. And only if I get all of that work done outside of working full time am I going to worry about doing anything extra. Before I get into the main topic of today, I would like to thank those who have supported me on Patreon. Currently, my Wall of Awesome has only 3 names on it, but if you get your awesomeness level up, you can reach the top of it, a place which is currently being dominated by Zevin art. If you get some entertainment from my work, then think about helping me to make more of it by contributing to my Patreon. If you want to contribute but you just don't have the cash to spare, that's cool too. I was a poor uni student for a long time and I'm just glad that I could help make your day a little better. But if you want to help, you can sing my praises to everyone you meet. Put a comment or a rating on the podcast, stop random people in the street and tell them to check out my work, hijack the local radio station and play a loop of my podcasts, even build a giant space laser and use it to burn my website address into the face of the moon. What I'm saying is, I really appreciate any level of support. The topic today is resistance. Resistance is a term coined by Steven Pressfield in The War of Art. To sum up what resistance is, let me read from the preface of The War of Art, which sums it up pretty well. Most of us have 2 lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stands resistance. Have you ever brought a treadmill home and let it gather dust in the attic? Ever quit a diet, a course of yoga, a meditation practice? Have you ever bailed out on a call to embark on a spiritual practice, dedicate yourself to humanitarian calling, commit your life to the service of others? Have you ever wanted to be a mother, a doctor, an advocate for the weak and helpless, to run for office, crusade for the planet, campaign for world peace, or preserve the environment? Late at night, have you experienced a vision of the person you might become, the work you could accomplish, the realized being that you were meant to be? Are you a writer who doesn't write, a painter who doesn't paint, an entrepreneur who never starts a venture? Then you know what resistance is. Pressfield isn't describing anything new. In fact, Pressfield is naming something that's very old. Resistance is the force that's in the back of your mind that tells you that you'll never be good enough. It's the thing that stops you from doing the great things in life that will consume your time and your energy and might not pay off. It's the mindless thing at the back of your head telling you that you should go back to uni and do a degree in chartered accountancy and not spend your time on such silly things as creating art. Resistance isn't writer's block, but it is the source of writer's block. It's the thing that tells writers that what they're writing isn't good. The thing that really hit home for me in reading The War of Art was the way that Pressfield describes resistance not as an enemy that can be defeated and vanquished, but as an enemy that is indomitable. An enemy that you will carry with you for your whole life and will constantly be looking for ways to try and stop you from achieving your goals. I think that this is a particularly potent idea for creative people to get into their vocabulary. The idea that when they're not being productive, it isn't because they're necessarily being lazy or because they're hopeless or because of any other reason that, their fathers might tell them, but because there's this part of human nature that's trying to stop you from doing work that's big and unwieldy and may not pay off. If something is carrying an element of risk with it, something's hard to do and is going to take a lot of energy to do, that's the kind of stuff that resistance is trying to get in and stop you from doing. And I think if a creative person can get their head around the idea that, you know what, I didn't get any work done today, resistance got the better of me, but tomorrow the fight begins again. I'm going to have a hearty breakfast, I'm going to get up early, and I'm going to, take the day head on. Now, there are some things that I don't really get on board with when it comes to The War of Art and Pressfield's view of resistance. Pressfield has a very spiritual kind of outlook on life, which I don't have. But as a giant science nerd, when someone starts telling me about a force that acts in opposition to doing things, it sounds more to me like an evolutionary process that was developed over human evolution to stop us from doing things that cost a lot of energy. If you think about it, it makes sense. The person on the savannah that needs to conserve their strength for when the rains come and when the food is plentiful shouldn't be out hunting when there's no food. The person that's constantly moving and doing things spends too much energy, they can't survive the bad times, and they die off. And the people that have the natural part of their psyche that tells them not to jump over that wide chasm and go explore the strange lands where it might turn out there's no food are the ones who survive. Unfortunately for resistance, there is a part of human nature that's constantly telling us that sometimes it does pay off and it pays off big. Sometimes you can spend your effort on doing a big thing and sometimes you get a big reward for it. And our conscious minds, the logic part of our brain tells us that sometimes it's worth it. But the older, more animal part of our brain says, no. You need to slow down. You need to wait until the rains come. Wait until everything is easy. And then spend your energy. And it makes sense to me, right? Because if you go out and you spend your energy on, alright, I'm gonna do nothing but, let's take on my case. I'm gonna do nothing but writing. I'm gonna quit my job. I'm just gonna write 24/7. I'm probably gonna last maybe 6 or 7 weeks on my savings. It's not like I've got a lot in the bank. So, if I'm not making the money from my writing to survive in that amount of time, then I'm screwed. And I can tell you now, even if I spent all of my time on doing the writing stuff and building up the podcast and doing all of that, there's no way I could build up enough to live off in 7 weeks. So this grand plan of building up a strong writing career by writing all of this stuff and building up a strong portfolio, and part of that is patience and building something strong over time. This is where the concept of paying your dues come in. The part of our brains that's telling us not to spend energy on long-term goals is countered by another part of our brains that's telling us that sometimes if you go over that next hill, you'll find the valley full of milk and honey, or the amazing rich vein of gold and become rich, or whatever it is. In both cases, in both the long-term payoff and the short-term reward, there are rules that have been set into human cultural experience that tell us what is or isn't appropriate. Sort of these meta guidelines that are set upon us about how to do things the right way. Or if not the right way, then at least tell us what works more often if you're willing to put in the work. We're told by human culture that the way to become a master at something is to first become a novice, a journeyman, and to develop your craft over time, to develop your skill by learning from the masters and honing your abilities in order to become a master yourself. We're told again and again in human culture that you can't rely on a get-rich-quick scheme in order to be able to provide for the coming winter. Human cultural experience is telling us that resistance is going to keep lying to us no matter what we do, and that there is a path that we can follow in order to achieve our goals if we're willing to put in the work. Grab the blacksmith's hammer, get to the anvil, and start hammering out those horseshoes, because eventually you'll be making the fancy candelabras that all the rich people want. Just looking at my bookcase, I can see a bunch of names of people who have put in the effort over a long time to build up their abilities. And even if they might have been seen as a huge success overnight, oh my god, they wrote this book and they become great, it was because they were standing on years of experience. I mean, take Stephen King just as an example. He spent years becoming an English teacher, sending off short fiction to various magazines and selling to various magazines, writing bits and pieces, and then he wrote Carrie, he sent Carrie off, and it was accepted. Which in itself is actually a rare story in that Carrie was his first manuscript. A lot of writers write a bunch of manuscripts that maybe they don't even submit, or if they submit they don't go anywhere, and that's the part of, at least in Stephen King's experience, he was sending off stuff and using those editors of magazines to develop his craft and to give him feedback and tell him what he was doing right or wrong. The authors who write 4 or 5 novels that never get published tend not to get that feedback, and so I think it actually takes them longer to be able to correct what they are doing wrong or right or wrong. And so that mechanism, which was good for writers like Asimov and Heinlein, and to write short fiction for stories like Analog, Science Fiction and Fact, send stuff to them. Maybe they don't want it. They say, oh, it's no good because it's no good. You have characters here that you never mention again, or you have a plot line that doesn't seem to go anywhere, or your writing has far too many damn commas in it. And then that way, the next time they write a piece and submit to those guys, they don't make those mistakes, and they make new mistakes, and they, develop through in order to become a better writer. The thing that these great writers have in common is that they kept writing, which I think is the most important message to get out of the War of Art. You have to keep on writing if you're going to become any good at it. You need to get the hours under your belt in order to build up enough know-how to be able to craft those fine art pieces that you want to be able to craft. But more than that, the one takeaway which I think everyone needs to know about, and I think it should be taught in schools, not just writers, not just artists or creative people, but everyone needs to know that sometimes life kicks you in the butt and gets the better of you. But tomorrow is a new day. Get back up, get back on that treadmill, get back on that computer keyboard, get back to work, and get it done. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's easy. The scars that resistance leaves on us are real, and getting back up after a savaging isn't always the easiest thing to do. Sometimes it can take a long time to build back up the confidence to take it back on again. I think one way to heal those wounds more quickly and to shore yourself up for the next battle is to be armed with the right kind of knowledge. If you know what resistance is, you're better able to describe it, you're better able to see it when it's coming for you, and if you can see the enemy, you're halfway there to winning the battle. And if not winning the battle, at least shortening the time that you spend catatonic in the medical tent. One of the curious but annoying aspects of resistance is how it's not applied equally to all tasks. It seems to more specifically target longer term tasks that are higher risk, things that are going to involve a lot of energy. I don't feel the same kind of resistance, if I feel any resistance at all, when it comes to going to my 9-to-5 job. My alarm goes off, I get up, I get ready for work, I go to work, I will even stay back late unpaid to impress the boss and make sure that, that I keep the boss happy, and there's not any good reason to do that since I'm not trying to be promoted or, there's no bonus on the cards or anything like that. It's entirely because I want to be seen as being a good worker as much as, I think there's an aspect of me that wants to be a good worker, sure, but I also want to be seen by my peers at work as being a good worker. And so that's something that I will spend a lot of energy in. It doesn't require, it's a very low threshold to get me to spend extra time at work or extra effort in doing this sort of thing. And I don't know if it's just because I get a weekly paycheck. You get that paycheck and you go, yep, that's what I've got. I mean, that certainly helps. I think there is also a peer factor. There's definitely, because you work with other people around you, you want to be seen as it's just an innate part of your brain that tells you you want to be on the inside of any group and not the outside of groups, because outside of groups you're vulnerable. It's definitely a different reward system for work versus writing. I mean, it's also true that the rewards from writing versus the rewards from work are very different things. It's hard to compare. You go to work, you earn enough money to live, you have nice things, versus you sit at the computer, you write, you feel great about coming up with these clever ideas and these playful characters and living in a world that is different to the modern world around us, there's definitely a part of my brain that tells me that I should be able to directly compare the reward that I get from writing and the reward that I get from work. But the truth is, they are different metrics. They're using different unit measurements that are not comparable. There is no way to convert the happiness I get from writing versus the happiness I get from not starving to death and being able to watch YouTube videos on my phone. Of course, the part of my brain that's telling me that I should be able to compare those two things is resistance. Of course it is. It's trying to tell me, oh well, it's clear if you compare them that the instant gratification or relatively instant gratification of your job is clearly better than spending time sitting at your computer getting writing done and getting other stuff done that you want to get done, so that I won't do it. Because it knows you go and you work, you get money, you get things done that you need to get done that week. Spend time writing. At the moment I've got 20 short stories, 20 flash fiction pieces written on my website. This is the 5th podcast that I've made. It hasn't been as much work as I'd hoped I would get done, but it's still been several months of work to get to this point now. And, I've seen my analytics, because I'm the kind of nerd who's going to look at those kinds of analytics. I know that barely anyone's looked at the website as it is. And that's exactly what I expect to happen, because I'm not advertising it. I'm just trying to build up a base of content. But at the same point, it's not giving that instant gratification that I get from work. And so my brain is telling me, oh no, well, you should just give it up. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. It's not like I haven't done it before. It's not like I haven't gone and not written for months or even years in some cases, where I've gone, oh no, well it's clearly silly, there's nothing will ever come of it. And then what happens? I find myself doodling with stories. I find myself jotting down little, I had this idea about this, maybe this guy who does this thing, and then wouldn't it be funny if they did this? Or, no, man, I really like this character on this show that I'm watching, and I'd really like to explore if they did, or if a character like them was put in a situation that was different, and all these sorts of things. And all of that happens naturally. And in fact, if I'm not writing, I find it bubbles out of me in an uncontrollable way, where I'm just constantly enamored with these ideas going off. Maybe I should be thinking about how this character would work differently if they had some different aspect of their past that changed the way that they thought about the world. All of that happens in my brain all the time. And I find if I'm writing, then at least I'm getting that idea out. It's like a song. When you get a song stuck in your head, right? And I don't know if other people do this, but I find the best way to get a song out of my head is to just sing it and just get into it. Just get fully into it. And then as I'm singing it, to modify it into some, you change the words and you make it a parody of itself, and then because it's become a parody, it sort of evaporates. It loses its power over you. I find it's the same kind of thing with writing. Not that I need to make it into a parody, but that if I've got an idea in my head of characters or a story, that it gets in and it ties itself around my brain, and it's always there, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm daydreaming about it, and I'm not getting any work done anywhere else. And I'm, what would happen if this happened, or what would... And consumes me. So that part of my brain that is resistance, that's saying, maybe you should give this up and maybe you shouldn't do it. Well, the counter to that part of my brain is, I've listened to it before. And you know what happens when I listen to it? Nothing good. I don't feel better. I feel miserable. Because all of that creative energy, all the creative stories and things that are naturally bubbling up into my brain have no outlet. And they just get cramped in there. Which means that listening to resistance is not the answer either. You need to find a balance between being creative and having enough energy to live. If I come home from work and I get my writing done and I go to bed, sometimes, it's pretty draining. It's draining to do creative work. You're spending all of your energy. And so if you do too much, if you go, well, right, on the weekend, I'm going to get 15,000 words written. And you spend all the days of the weekend just smashing this stuff out. By the time it gets back to Monday and you've got to get back to your job, and you've got to be good at your job or you're not going to get paid, if you're too tired, that's now disaffecting you. You've got to find that healthy balance between getting paid and doing at least the bare minimum at work and spending that creative energy on something that's actually going to contribute to making you happier. Anyway, I feel like I'm jabbering on a lot. Well, I suppose I'm always jabbering on a lot, so I'm jabbering on more. Hopefully, the idea of resistance helps you out. Hopefully, the idea that seeing every day as a new day, as a new battle against the part of your brain that's telling you not to spend a lot of energy on doing things, is a useful one, or at least maybe my wandering thoughts have helped you to clarify what you think about it. Anyway, I think I've reached the end of recording for today. It's ridiculously late. And I need to get some sleep so I can get up and get back to work tomorrow. So I'd love to hear what you think about resistance, whether or not you think my ramblings have helped you at all, or whether or not you think I'm just clearly a madman and you'll never listen to this podcast again. Thanks for listening to it the first time, getting all the way to the end. So the flash fiction stories that I write, typically if I set myself a prompt, it usually just has 2 random ideas and I smash them together and see what comes out. If you'd like to see what I can do with 2 random ideas and you want to send me a prompt for a story, or a comment or a question, or you just want to tell me how bad I am as a human being and how I'll never amount to anything, you can contact me at contact@robert-lynch.com or on Twitter at @BobLynchBSC. If you like what I do and you want to help me make more of it, then check out the Patreon and see what extra things I have on offer. I think I've got more than 10 Patreon exclusive stories up there now. You get access to the stories for as little as $1 a month, and there's a bunch of other things on there, but I'm always looking to change up my Patreon as well, so if you think there's a few things that I could offer or that you'd like to see, then don't hesitate to contact me and let me know. And if you've got some good ideas, I'd love to hear them. As always, you can check out my website for new stuff every weekday, and I will see you next week. Thanks, guys.